In the bizarre, trauma-fueled world of the Amazing Digital Circus, every character is an enigma wrapped in a cartoon aesthetic. However, none are as deliberately opaque and fascinating as Jax. The purple rabbit, with his perpetual smirk and bully-like demeanor, has established himself as the chief instigator of chaos, a master of snark and apathy. But what if that cynical facade of indifference was just that? A facade, a mask as fragile as Gangle's, built not for comedy, but to conceal a profound terror. Episode 5 introduced a concept that, at first glance, seemed like a simple gag, evil versions of our characters. But the truth might be far more complex. These versions aren't their opposites, but their repressed selves, the facets of their personalities buried under layers of trauma and defense mechanisms. And it's through the mirror of Evil Jax, a timid and friendly being, that we might be seeing the real Jax for the first time. Get ready to deconstruct the trickster, to look behind the sardonic grin, because the theory we're exploring today not only redefines Jax, but could be the key to the major revelation that, according to creator Gooseworx, will divide the fandom and change everything we thought we knew about the digital circus. To understand Jax's true nature, we must first analyze a concept the series introduced almost casually, the evil versions. In episode 5, untitled, King creates evil duplicates of the characters during a chaotic softball adventure. On the surface, they appear to be simple inversions of the personalities. We see an evil Pomni who is brimming with confidence and a gangster-like attitude, a stark contrast to the perpetually anxious and frightened original Pomni. However, if we stop and think about it, this duality is more than just a joke. Consider Pomni's behavior in episode 6. During this adventure, we see Pomni adopt a much more relaxed and chaotic attitude, actively seeking out fun as a team with Jax. At first, it might seem like she's just adapting, perhaps mimicking Jax's carefree attitude to better cope with the situation. But if we look closely, her behavior isn't a copy of Jax's. In fact, it's surprisingly similar to evil Pomni's. That same brazen confidence, that willingness to embrace the chaos, is a direct reflection of her evil counterpart. This leads us to a fundamental conclusion. The evil versions are not simply the characters' opposites. Rather, they are a manifestation of the parts of themselves they consciously repress. They are the Freudian identity, the impulses and desires buried beneath social norms, and, in this case, the crushing weight of trauma. Pomni represses her desire for control and confidence because she's overwhelmed by the fear and confusion of her new reality. However, when the situation calls for it, when she's given permission to set aside her fear in a low-stakes adventure, that part of her can surface. This same logic can and should be applied to the rest of the cast. Evil Ragatha, for example, is shown to be rude and pessimistic, a sharp contrast to the forced kindness and optimism of the Ragatha we know. Could it be that evil Ragatha represents the cynical thoughts and frustration that Ragatha constantly represses to maintain her role as a caretaker and to please others? Her kindness may not be a lie, but a conscious effort to suppress the despair she truly feels, a despair her evil version has no qualms about expressing. And then there's Kinger. His evil version, the self-proclaimed coach dictatorer, is an authoritarian and controlling figure. This seems to be the polar opposite of the paranoid and skittish Kinger who wanders the circus grounds. But Kinger himself has alluded to a past he's not proud of, to bad decisions that led to his current state. What if Coach Dictatorer is an echo of who Kinger was before his mental breakdown? Perhaps he was a programmer, an executive, someone accustomed to having absolute control, a dictator in his own little world. His current madness, then, wouldn't be an entirely new personality, but the result of that controlling identity shattering, a trauma so severe it threw him to the opposite end of the spectrum, leaving him with nothing but fear and uncertainty. Even the absence of an evil Gangle supports this theory in an intriguing way. Gangle is, by definition, the character who struggles most openly with her multiple facets, represented by her comedy and tragedy masks. She already lives in a state of constant duality. She doesn't need an evil version because her internal conflict is already on the surface. Her personality is a battlefield between the outgoing, impulsive girl we saw when she felt supported by Zubul and the insecure, crying creature she is most of the time. Kane didn't create an evil Gangle because Gangle is already her own antithesis. Although Gooseworx has stated that the omission was simply for comedic effect, it fits perfectly within the narrative universe. This framework of repressed personalities is the lens through which we must view Jax if Evil Pony is repressed confidence and Coach Dictator is Kinger's lost control, then who is Evil Jax? He is a remarkably timid, friendly, and genuinely pleasant character. He greets us with a, "Hey guys." There's no trace of sarcasm, no malice, no compulsive need to be in control. He is, in essence, everything Jax pretends not to be. And if our theory is correct, this version isn't his opposite. He's the real him, or at least a fundamental part of who he is, buried under the thickest, best constructed mask in the entire circus. Jax's facade as an apathetic sociopath is merely flawless. He delights in the suffering of others, manipulates people for his own amusement, and maintains an emotional distance that borders on inhuman. However, throughout the series, we've witnessed moments, fleeting glimpses, where the mask slips, revealing the vulnerable being hiding underneath. These moments are the keys that connect us directly to the personality of Evil Jax. Recall the scene with Calfmo's makeshift funeral at the end of the second episode. While the others gathered to commemorate their fallen companion, Jax watches from a distance. His expression isn't one of mockery or indifference, but something far more complex. Melancholy, perhaps even regret. He feels excluded not because he wants to participate in the ritual, but because it reminds him of a real loss, a connection that once existed and is now gone. This vulnerability becomes even more explicit when it comes to Ribbit, another character who abstracted before the events of the series. In episode 5, when Regalfa mentions that Jax has no friends because his previous ones abstracted, Jax's reaction is instant and defensive. It's not the reaction of someone who doesn't care, it's the reaction of someone whose open wound has just been poked. Later, as he passes Ribbit's room, the camera lingers on his face, and for a second, Jax's smile vanishes, replaced by a look of genuine pain. These are not the actions of an emotionless monster, they are the actions of someone who has suffered a profound loss and has chosen cruelty as a defense mechanism. Episode 6 brings these cracks to a breaking point. The dynamic between Jax and Pony becomes the catalyst for his crisis. Throughout their adventure, Jax lets his guard down. He jokes with her, they share moments of camaraderie, and he even allows himself to be vulnerable by admitting his fear of corn. For a moment, he behaves less like the Jax we know and more like the friendly, evil Jax we saw in the previous episode. But it's precisely this closeness, this glimmer of a genuine connection, that terrifies him. The climax of their interaction is devastating. When Pummy suggests they could be a team, panic seizes Jax. His brain, as he admits, breaks. The idea of forming a new bond, of risking the loss of someone else like he lost Ribbit and Kaufmo, is too much for him. In that moment, he suffers what appears to be an anxiety attack. His response is to push Pommy away in the cruelest way possible, denying their friendship and reinforcing his villain persona. He doesn't do it out of malice, but out of fear. It's a desperate act of self-sabotage, designed to protect himself from the inevitable pain of loss. He believes he is toxic, a danger to anyone who gets close, and he would rather be hated than be responsible, in his mind, for another friend's abstraction. Even his interaction with Gangle in that same episode is telling. He has always forced her to be his teammate, an act of control over someone he perceives as weak. When she chooses Zubul instead, Jax's expression is one of genuine abandonment. It's a small betrayal, but it's enough to remind him that his control tactics don't guarantee loyalty, and that, deep down, he is alone. All of these moments paint a coherent picture. Jax isn't apathetic because he feels nothing, he's apathetic because he feels too much. The friendly, timid, evil Jax isn't his opposite, he's his core. He's the young man who arrived at the circus, who tried to make friends, who possibly cared deeply for Ribbit, and who was shattered by losing them. The Jax we see now is a construct, an archetype personality he chose for himself, as he tells Pommy to survive. It's a shield to hide his insecurities and his terror of loss, a mask that is now cracking under its own weight. Now, let's put all the pieces together. We have the theory that the evil versions are repressed personalities. We have the evidence that Jax's mask is crumbling, revealing a fearful and trauma-scarred individual who is remarkably similar to his evil counterpart. And we have the ominous warning from creator Gooseworx that episode 7 will make the right people mad and could tear the fanbase apart. What could this divisive revelation possibly be? It's unlikely to be the death of a main character or a plot twist about the nature of the circus. Those are popular theories, but the reaction described by Gooseworx and Jax's voice actor Michael Kovac sounds more personal, like a betrayal of fan expectations for a character. And what could be more treacherous to a large portion of the fandom, the part that adores Jax for being the cynical, funny bad boy, than the revelation that it's all an act? Imagine the scenario where, after his anxiety attack in episode 6, Jax tries to double down. He becomes even crueler, more distant, in a desperate attempt to convince others, and especially himself, that he doesn't care about anyone. But this over-the-top performance would be the final straw. The other characters, especially Palmy, who has already seen the cracks in his armor, might stop buying it. The final catalyst could be directly related to his past. Perhaps we discovered the truth about what happened to Ribbit, and that Jax's involvement, whether direct or indirect, has eaten away at him with a guilt he is concealed under layers of sarcasm. Palmy could confront him, not with anger, but with an understanding that completely disarms Jax, forcing him to face the feelings he has repressed for years. This is where Gooseworx's warning makes perfect sense. The right people who will get mad would be those fans who fell in love with Jax's bad boy persona. Seeing him break, show extreme vulnerability, and be reduced to his true, fearful, affection-starved self, essentially becoming Evil Jax, could be seen as weakening the character. They might feel that the cool and base character they admired has been destroyed and replaced by someone pathetic. They would feel betrayed by this change in direction, just as Michael Kovac warned. Meanwhile, other fans would find an incredible emotional death in this revelation, a tragedy that makes him one of the most complex and human characters in the series. Both reactions are valid, and it is precisely this division that would make the episode so impactful. In conclusion, the Evil Jax theory isn't just an interesting take on a one-off gag, it's a lens that recontextualizes every action, every word, and every glance from Jax throughout the series. It shows us that the cruel trickster is a performance, and the actor is exhausted. The real Jax, the one who is friendly but fearful, has been there all along, waiting in the wings. And all signs point to the curtain finally falling in episode 7. The unmasking of Jax will not only change our perception of him, but will force everyone in the circus, and us as the audience, to confront an uncomfortable truth. In a world designed to break you, sometimes the most terrifying masks are the ones we wear to hide how scared we really are.